We will get to where Bill Belichick could wind up next in about 10 minutes, but on a day like today, it really is about kind of realizing how the hell did they do this in New England? 6 Super Bowl wins in 24 years, one of the longest tenures, which I think is something in its own right that is worth pointing out. Like, coaches don't get to be a coach somewhere for 24 years. And I think Belichick is particularly fascinating in that realm because, Vic, we were talking before the show about this, right? And I was like, you don't get to be 24 years somewhere. And if you are, you don't get the same quarterback for 20. Like, and then I was like, you know what? Maybe that's the only way you do it. Is the only way you actually get to be somewhere for 24 years is if you have someone who can be a tent pole with you for an extraordinarily large part of that. And it's why I think the Belichick-Brady partnership is so fascinating. And by the way, it feels silly not to mention this as this thought goes through my head. How the hell has Mike Tomlin been in Pittsburgh for 17 years? That dude has never had a losing season. He's had multiple quarterbacks. Like, obviously, Roethlisberger was there for a long time. But unlike when Brady left and Belichick has fallen apart, the Patriots have fallen apart. Tomlin just keeps winning. And he's only 7 years behind Belichick, which I realize is a lot of years, but also isn't. 17 for Tomlin. Nuts. But for Bill, I thought a quote by Julian Edelman was incredibly fascinating. He said on an interview recently, I saw this in passing, so apologies for not properly crediting it, but that you worked for Bill, but you played for Tom. We worked for Bill, but we played for Tom. We did the things we had to do, meaning, we did the things we had to do. X's and O's, the way we practice, all that kind of stuff. That was all because Belichick was in charge. And we ultimately had to answer the bell for him. The way he wanted it, he ran things, all of that. That was on Bill. But when it came down to the emotional, guttural, everything of the game, that's about Brady and the emotional lift that he gave, the emotional stability he brought to the organization. And I think when you look at Belichick, the person, and kind of what we know about him, we know that he's not the warmest guy. We know that while he definitely has a bigger personality than he lets on, we've seen glimpses of that over the years. We've seen it with Randy Moss inviting him to the Halloween party and him showing up and the pictures getting out. And all of a sudden it's like, whoa, Belichick out there in a pirate costume. Didn't see that one coming. Or even today, Belichick at his press conference this morning, plenty of cameras, had a funny line.
All right, morning. All right, morning. Seen this many cameras since we signed Tebow.
Not since we signed. That's a funny bit. Shows he's paying attention. I remember talking to Nora Princiati, who now works for The Ringer, used to work for the Boston Globe, and when she was here in Washington, working for the Times, covering the Commanders, she would talk about how Belichick would call the diehards on the beat on Fridays. Because what happens in the week on an NFL beat is Wednesday, everyone's there. Thursday, a few less people are there. Friday, it's the core beat reporters whose job it really is. Not your TV reporters who are local reporters and cover the team. But if your job is I cover the football team for the outlet, then you're there on Fridays. And Belichick would have a nickname for that group, these are my Friday hardcore crew or whatever he called them. And so there is a person there, but we know it's prickly. We know there's some complications on interpersonal skills perhaps, and Brady covered up for a lot of it. Because I think Brady was so respected and was such Brady was a player and was one of the guys and was approachable and all of that. I think, but he also like had an air of legend about him, especially in the latter decade that they're together. The first one, maybe it's a little bit different, and those teams are more driven by Teddy Bruschi and Willie McGinnis and Ty Law and all those guys, Richard Seymour. But for the last decade, like Brady's Brady. Like he's literally a living legend. And so I think Belichick knew that he could just focus on being the X's and O's genius schematics guy that he was. And he could be also really demanding because Brady, like he would get on Brady. He would be demanding of Brady. And Brady was like, I love this because Tom was just built that way. And that meant everyone else had to fall in line. It's also why some players left and they were like, I can't do this. Like, he's too hard on me. This is insane. No, I'm not doing this anymore. And you see some guys leave and be like, I'm appreciative of my time there, but like I had to get out. And they were happier when they left, even if they maybe didn't win as much because they're human beings and living to that standard every day is difficult. But because Brady did it, no one else had an excuse. And that's why when every other coach leaves New England, most of them have failed because it's impossible to get another Brady to enforce your culture like that. And to also be a kind of go-between because living legend, good guy to have in the locker room. And so that quote from Edelman and everything I just said isn't remotely meant to diminish what Belichick did, nor erase this fact or diminish this fact. I think he's definitely one of the 5 best coaches ever, and I think there's a really good argument to be made that he is the best football coach that has ever put a whistle around his neck. What he did schematically over the course of 25 years is remarkable. Because unlike a lot of the well-known schematics coaches who are like known for their thing, Belichick's thing was being able to stop your thing, no matter what it was. He shapeshifted from 3-4 to 4-3, sometimes within a game. He would invent coverage structures or use different tactics to take away the thing that you did best. And one week that might mean, hey, we're shutting down Santonio Holmes when the Jets were his main rival in the early 2010s. And the next week it could be shutting down a running game. And now we're in the playoffs and we got to stop Jerome Bettis. Like he figured out how to do it all the time defensively and let Brady cook at a really high level offensively. They played complementary football. They understood how to get the most out of the 53. And obviously special teams was kind of his baby. Somewhere where he was pretty much always great. So I think that flexibility, that adaptability, that pliability, this is my opinion, is one of the most impressive things I've ever seen in any sport, coaching. But the reason he's able to apply those skills, I think, the maximum potential of that is unlocked by Brady in the same way that Phil Jackson's genius, which is kind of Tex Winter's genius, his lead assistant who kind of came up with the triangle, was the master of the triangle. But Phil's genius is unlocked by Kobe and Jordan and Shaq. And those players are not as great without him. Not a single, I guess Shaq ultimately won one in Miami without him. But those guys won with Phil. They didn't win without him. And Phil didn't win without those guys and won with them. And I think, could Brady have won a Super Bowl without Belichick? Could Belichick have won a Super Bowl without Brady? Maybe. But them together, it's the perfect match. And that's sports. It's not meant to take one away or take away from one or the other. It's just meant to say that when you get dynasties, it's because you get the perfect match of talent and coaching. The Warriors are unlocked because Steve Kerr is who he is. The Bulls because of Phil. But the same way, Phil's unlocked because of Jordan, Kerr's unlocked because of Curry. Duncan and Popovich. Walsh and Montana. Pick your era, pick your sport. Red Auerbach and Bill Russell. Belichick and Brady, people have spent so much time over these last couple of years talking about, oh, well, clearly it's, Belichick wasn't the guy. It was all Brady because Brady left and won another one. But when you're 20 years in and you've learned from that guy for, 19 of them, that probably counts for something too. They were the perfect muses for each other. And we'll see where Belichick goes from here. And in fact, we'll talk about that next. But instead of debating who gets more credit and whatever, realize that quote from Edelman is actually a compliment to both, and appreciate the both of them for who they are and what they meant to the NFL and the entertainment they provided, / the immense frustration by the fact that most people hated them for the entire time.
Hey, this is DA, and you're listening to The Hoffman Show on the Team 980 and the Odyssey app.